The case of whether New Zealand should have a system of mandatory builders' guarantees has come up again, and this week's Shoeshine columnist Maria Slade is banging her head on the table. Once again as well, by the sounds of it, Maria.
Yes, Hamish, I brought a prop for you. This was a cover story I wrote for The Listener 5 years ago, before I was working with NBR, obviously.
So we've revisited the issue
Yes,
this week,
indeed. And I was stunned to discover that basically nothing has changed in this intervening period. New Zealand still has no system of mandatory builders' guarantees. And in fact, the situation's got worse with a number of players exiting the market in that time. And now there's pretty much just the master builders' guarantee, which is seen as the market leader.
So what sort of is the lay of the land then, I suppose, in terms of these guarantees?
Well, unlike in many other countries, New Zealand has no system where when you build a house, it is compulsory to get a guarantee from your builder that, everything's going to be fine. And people have long argued that this is required here because it's like the Wild West out there, and there's something like half, that people don't even know, but there's something like half of houses are built with no guarantee whatsoever.
Wow.
And this has led, even when people do have guarantees, one of the common problems has been people who have master build guarantees discover the builder goes bust. He never passed on the documentation to master builders, and so they don't even have a guarantee. There was a case that came up just the other week of that, and there's a sort of several dozen homeowners that have been left in this position. So it's just an ongoing problem. And the government, or the various governments, have been completely resistant to the idea that we should have a scheme of mandatory guarantees, some sort of scheme where there's a setup of private providers that are regulated or anything like that. And then just this last month, MB has come out with yet another report, yet another document looking at this issue, saying there's a very weak case, in their words, for a publicly provided scheme. Now, this would be one where the government underwrote it.
Sure.
So that's the Rolls-Royce solution. And they're saying, that there's too much risk to the taxpayer, too much complexity, and they're not even convinced that it would encourage better building standards and building quality.
How has that been received from sort of, advocacy groups on the homeowners side? Or?
Oh, talking of banging your head on the desk, it was almost a collective sound of people's foreheads dropping. That they just can't see why. Well, for one thing, they can't see why there needs to be the Rolls-Royce solution. Why could we not have some sort of system of regulating providers? I mean, we have other insurance markets. We regulate all sorts of professions. Why could we not have that? And secondly, this idea that, shifting the risk to insurers would somehow lead to builders going, oh, well, we don't need to worry about quality, the insurers are taking the risk, is ridiculous. I mean, you compare it to the car insurance market, for example. People have car insurance. Does that mean motor vehicle manufacturers don't worry about safety and quality as a result? Yeah. It's nonsensical in my view, and in a lot of other people's views who I've spoken to in the market. So effectively, we're just right back at square one, and homeowners have very little protection.
You caught up with the couple that you interviewed?
Yes, a couple that I wrote about in this story. 5 years on, I rang them, and at the time they had a horrendous experience. They had spent 2 years battling with a builder that was slowly going bust. Tradies not getting paid, discovered that their master build guarantee hadn't been passed on, so it wasn't valid. They had to take it to the master builders. There was a complaints hearing. The builder, who was in fact a former president of the organisation, was finally kicked out, but they were still left with a house that was unfinished and over budget, and they grew grey hairs trying to fix this. And at the time, they were very adamant about the idea of they needed a system of, regulatory system of guarantees. And I caught up with Sean just this week, and his view hasn't changed. And he says, does MB not read the papers? Do they not see all these horror stories of homeowners being left high and dry by this complete regulatory abyss? But seemingly not.
And I mean, also, if you consider how many houses are being built, need to be built, and all the other regulatory change going on in this sector as well, it's sort of, why aren't they doing anything about this?
It's really hard to understand, and it doesn't appear to be a political issue. It appears to be a bit of a blind spot by the policy wallers, in my view. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that governments are coming in making extreme changes like the Enabling Housing Supply Act, sort of trying to upzone the whole country as an answer to the housing shortage, when really there are practical solutions such as this right in front of their noses that could inspire a lot of confidence and encourage people to build a house. Honestly, after some of the horror stories that I have heard in the course of writing about this sort of stuff, I would think twice, 3 times before going through the process of building a house. So, that's not what you need when you need more houses constructed.
Right, well, I'll mark in my diary to check in again in 5 years' time, but that's this week's Shoeshine column. Maria, thanks for your time.
Thank you.